All right, welcome everyone. We have a very large audience today. Welcome to the Unlearn live event. We're going to give everyone an opportunity to go ahead and join our virtual space. So we'll let everybody go ahead and get settled in. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started very shortly, but we want to give everyone the opportunity to go ahead and file into our virtual space. We're expecting about 1,000 people, more than 1,000 people today, so we want to give everyone an opportunity to go ahead and join. Again, thank you so much to those of you who are joining us today for our Unlearn live event. We are expecting a massive audience today. And so we're just going to give everyone an opportunity to file into our virtual space, and we'll go ahead and get started very shortly. Again, thank you so much. And the numbers keep on stacking up. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to get started here in just a moment with our Unlearn live event. We are expecting a very large audience today, so we'll give everyone the opportunity to go ahead and get settled in, and we will go ahead and start very shortly. All right, numbers keep piling up. We have so many people joining the call today. We want to give everyone an opportunity to go ahead and join, so thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, and we're going to get started very shortly. And on that note, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone around the world. My name is Chris Martinez, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our Unlearn live event. My name, as I mentioned, is Chris Martinez, and I'm the mayor at Gadventures. Yes, that's right. You heard me right. There is a mayor at Gadventures, and my role is all about focusing on our unique our corporate culture and the passionate, purpose-driven people that make up Gadventures. I get to champion all those folks, and occasionally I get to hang out with about 1,500 people such as yourselves to have some really great chats. Enough about me. We do want to take an opportunity to welcome the entire audience. As I mentioned earlier, we're expecting over 1,500 people today, or we've had over 1,500 people sign up. So we want to send a big welcome to all of our friends in Canada, the UK, and the US. But we've got people here from all over the place, including Kuwait, Estonia, and Trinidad and Tobago. So welcome, everyone. We do want to say thank you so much for joining us. We hope you and your families are safe and well in this time, and we genuinely appreciate you taking the time to join us today for our Unlearn live event, focusing on the future of travel in a post-pandemic world. A couple housekeeping items to make sure that you get the very best experience today. We've collected a lot, hundreds, in fact, of questions in advance from all of you, so thank you. And we're going to attempt to answer as many of those as possible throughout today's conversation. We're also going to be taking the opportunity to take a few additional questions. So if you're inspired by the conversation, or if you showed up with all kinds of ideas of things you want to ask, go ahead and drop them in the question and answer section of Zoom, and we'll do our best to get to some of those. In addition to that, we do want to encourage everyone to go ahead and hover over the top of your screens and select Fit to Screen at the top. And that's going to give you the best possible viewing experience. And finally, this session is being recorded. So today, you're going to hear a lot less of me because we do have an amazing group of panelists today. And I want to take an opportunity to introduce you to them. So first up, we have Joe Diaz, who's the co-founder of AFAR Media. And AFAR inspires, enables, and guides discerning travelers through its award-winning platforms, AFAR Magazine and AFAR.com. Joe passionately believes in the transformational power of travel, and he's an accomplished speaker and frequently lends his expertise on a variety of topics, including travel trends and innovation. Welcome, Joe.
Good to see you. Good to be with you.
Absolute pleasure. We've also have Lynn Hughs with us today, and Lynn is the founder and editor-in-chief of Wanderlust Travel Media. Lynn is still very much hands-on as the editor-in-chief. She's also a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, and is regularly consulted on travel-related issues, especially regarding sustainable tourism. She strongly believes in tourism as a force for good, benefiting local communities, wildlife, and the natural world. Welcome, Lynn.
Hey, Dad.
Great to see you. And we also have with us today Shannon Stowell, the CEO of Adventure Travel Trade Association, ATTA. And Shannon Stowell has led the Adventure Travel Trade Association as a CEO since 2004, restarting the organization and pursuing the vision that it could be a powerful force for good in the tourism industry. Shannon has been advising and speaking around the world for the last 15 years, advocating for responsible travel. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you, Chris.
It's a pleasure. And finally, somebody I know pretty well, I'd love to introduce you to the New York Times bestseller of Luke Tale, an entrepreneur and philanthropist. And you, as well as I, probably know him best for starting the small group adventure travel company G Adventures 30 years ago. Welcome, Bruce Poon Tip.
Thank you, Chris.
It's a pleasure. I'm going to hand it over to you, Bruce.
Great. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. It's great to have you guys. This is a great group, and so thank you for accepting our invitation to come and have a chat here today. I have to say this is a first. I realized this morning, nervously realized that I'm actually the host here. I actually asked you guys to kind of come along to have a chat, and maybe we can get some people to watch us have a chat. And it turns out now I am a host, and I'm used to being asked the questions, so I'm super prepared. And we've had a ton of questions. I actually was hoping to keep this as more of a fireside chat, and but we had a ton of questions. We had, I think, almost 400 questions from people prior to this, and we actually consolidated them and found out there was a few questions that over 100 people had asked. So obviously there's things, there's common threads on what people are thinking about right now. And I wanted to, get some of those questions and, find some time to just have an open chat, keep it easy, ask questions back and forth. Feel free to ask questions to each other and, to me as well. And let's just see how this goes. So you're at the hands of a first-time host here. So welcome, Shannon, Lynn, and Joe. It's great to see all of you. I kind of asked you guys individually to take part in this, and I purposely didn't contact you again because I didn't want to kind of discuss what we would discuss. So it would keep it open and natural for all of us. But I haven't seen, I've heard from you actually all during this pandemic at some point, either by writing or by call. But prior to that, it's been years since we've actually had a chance to sometimes a year goes by before we see each other. So it's great to see you guys. I respect all of you, and that's why I personally reached out to the three of you to get your opinions on some of these issues we're facing as an industry. And this audience, I think, is going to be mainly travelers, and I guess our travelers coming from our database. But there's a lot of industry people that will also either listen to this later or are taking part right now. But it's a huge group, and so I think thank you all for agreeing to take part. But first, let me ask you, what has life in lockdown been like? And did you have travel plans interrupted, when the lockdown kind of happened around the middle of March? I'll start with you, Joe. How's things with you?
Well, thank you, Bruce. And first, it's great to be here with all of you. Great to be here with Shannon and Lynn and the G team, and more importantly, your audience of travelers. This is such an important, momentous time for us, and I think it's really important and very thankful for you being able to create a forum that allows us to talk about these important issues that are happening in our worlds and how we can move forward in a more evolved and thoughtful way. Lockdown has been, like for all of us, an interesting, crazy, and sometimes scary time. Was based in New York City. We got to see it firsthand. Our offices completely shut down. Everyone was working remote. We moved up to Maine March 23rd and have been up here basically ever since. And so it's really taken, throwing us a big curveball. And so there are definitely, as I think about, things that I'm missing, some of the simple things. I'm missing handshakes and hugs. I'm missing being able to connect in person with my colleagues. I'm missing being able to sit at some of my favorite Japanese restaurants and have, an omakase. I'm missing public transportation, honestly. I get to ride the subway every single morning to work. And I feel like that's the great equalizer. When I can get on that subway in New York City and see people from all walks of life, different shapes, sizes, colors, persuasions, all riding together on the same train. And I feel like that's so important for today. And so those are some of the things that I'm missing. I'd say most importantly, the work that we get to do with partners like you guys at G Adventures, and the nonprofit work that we're doing, getting young people out in the world at an early age through our programs like Learning AFAR, where G Adventures was such an important partner to us last year, getting kids who normally would never have an opportunity to travel in this way, to get them out in the world and use travel as a way to transform not only their lives, but their communities. And G was generous enough to send 10 students from Oakland, California last year on a trip to Belize. So that work right now is kind of at a standstill. And so that's something that I'm really missing, is not being able to do that work in the way which we want to do it right now.
Great. What about you, Lynn? How's lockdown for you?
Mixed feelings with lockdown. I'm based in Windsor, just outside London. And so we closed down the office in early March. In fact, before the kind of official lockdown in the UK. And so we've all been working from home ever since. That bit of it I'm actually loving, I must admit. I'm blessed in living somewhere very beautiful. It's been spring. We've had a very good spring in the UK for a change, and lots of sunshine. I look out my window and I see wonderful birds, and feel like I'm really connecting with nature. And so unlike Joe, I'm not missing the commuting or the hurly-burly of London. I do not want to be on that packed commuter train again. And I think, we are very seriously looking, for instance, with the business as to what the next steps are in that, do we actually need an office going forward? Those are the sort of questions that obviously so many organisations are asking themselves. And being at home, though, having said that, yes, it does throw up its challenges. We're on press day today for the next issue of the magazine. And so doing it remotely is very strange. It is actually why I've got the front cover on my wall, because that is the cover proof for the issue that's going today. And just as well it came, because I spotted a spelling mistake on it, which I hadn't pressed and noticed on screen.
On the cover?
Yeah, caught it in time. I've got till midnight. It's only 5:10 here.
Wow.
And I've got till midnight, so just as well. It shows paper still works. So it's very strange being in lockdown. My travel plans were interrupted. I was meant to be in Australia in April, partly for a wedding, but partly to do a story on Kangaroo Island about resilience and restoration after all they've been through. And so that was very disappointing. Really looking forward to travel again. But it does feel like things are definitely beginning to pick up. In the UK, unfortunately, we've still got a Foreign Office advisory saying that we can't travel. But we've sent a journalist out, nevertheless, this week to Iceland. And
wow.
Yeah, so we've already got a freelancer out, ready to get a report from there. And so it does feel like things are about to come back in some form. So it just feels like we're on the cusp of something, which is exciting.
Excellent. What about you, Shannon?
Yeah, definitely an interruption. I was on my first sabbatical. I'd been at my role for 15 years and took a 3-month sabbatical. And at 2.5 months, I got a call from the team that said, "You need to come back now." And that was in early February, or actually mid-February. I'm in the Seattle area, so we were also in the early wave. So it was definitely shocking, and not the most, not at all a pleasant situation to come back to face. But it's been a really interesting experience. I would say March and April were pretty much the worst months I've ever had in business, and now we're finding our new path, climbing out, figuring it out. All of our travel plans changed. We put on a bunch of events per year, every year, and all of them got canceled because of the destinations and the timing. So we're learning to do the classic pivot of moving things virtual. We already worked virtually, so that part was not a shift for us. That was easy because we were already doing it. And then I have kind of the opposite living situation from Joe also. I live in the country near Seattle. I'm about 45 minutes from Seattle. And so I haven't felt cooped up. We've got lots of places we can go and walk and not see people. So that part has been nice. But I think we've done takeout twice. So my wife went crazy with learning to grow mushrooms and make cheese and make bread, like classic. We sort of went back to pioneer. So we've learned some new skills, and I'm taking Portuguese lessons from her. So
wow.
Yeah, we're
the most of isolation. Excellent.
Yeah,
You're making the most of isolation.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could also attest to the fact that, you know, this whole thing escalated so quickly. That the extraordinary thing is it went from, you know, can this really happen? Like, can countries close? I remember, like, can the US really ban Europeans? Can India really close its borders to suddenly the world just shutting down, and we all in businesses, you know, went into survival mode at one point, and that was really tough. But I think we can all say right now in business, we're actually starting to see the opportunities on the other side of this. The opportunities not only as a business, but as a planet, as an industry. And so there's a little bit more excitement now, but I think we can all agree that it was a tough couple months. And we're now at a stage where we've all had to make some tough decisions. We've had to pivot. We were all quite comfortable in our industries and in our companies, and we were forced into this moment of pause. And I think it's time for us to kind of also look and see how we come out stronger on this. So everyone says how we're going to come out stronger on the other side of this, but what does that really mean? Like, I'm sure everyone's gotten emails like me from everything you've ever ordered online to find out every t-shirt company you've ever ordered something from or whatever on how they're handling the COVID crisis. And everyone says they're going to come out stronger, but what does that actually mean is the question. But let's actually start with the first question about, you know, that a lot of people are asking about is, you know, it's actually pre-pandemic actually. One of the top questions was, you know, just before the pandemic, you know, the industry in general was dealing with a couple major things, which is, you know, Greta Thunberg and the, you know, the flight shaming and the issues of over-tourism. Do you think that, you know, what do you think of these issues coming on the other side of this? Are they still, you know, as important? Obviously they're still important, but are they still a focus will be I guess, as highlighted as they were in the news, and is that good for travel or is it bad for travel? You know, what are your thoughts on that? We'll start with you, Lynn.
No, interesting one. I think that it will take a while before it really comes back into the top of the news agenda. You know, because it certainly was getting so much coverage just before the pandemic, and of course it's not something that certainly the media is thinking about at the moment. But having said that, I do think that if anything, this will have helped people's awareness of the planet. And obviously we've seen that. We've seen people sort of get really excited about the fact that they see nature regenerating, they see wildlife on the streets, that they have, certainly in the UK, there's been a bit of a thing that so many people say they've heard bird song for the first time properly. And so I think that a lot of people will just be more aware generally about their travels, and even if they weren't so much thinking it before. And we've done 2 reader surveys in the last 6 weeks, and we found that there's been a definite shift. I mean, our readers anyway, I mean, a bit like your customers, Bruce, our readers do tend to be the ones who are what we call perhaps the more conscious traveller. They're curious about the world, they care about the world. But even so, in the surveys, we've seen a real shift where people are saying things like, oh, you know, I'll never take travel for granted again. I'll choose my trips more carefully. I'll choose everything more carefully. I want to help people now. I want to help local businesses. And so I think that, you know, it's been a real jolt to the system for people. They've realised that the planet will actually really, you know, look after itself and come back really strongly if it's, you know, we're not sort of trampling everything. I think that they've realised that actually it is rather nice to have a bit of quiet in our lives and an appreciation of nature. And I think that they have realised that, you know, I mean, I know I realised that we can't take that sort of freedom to travel for granted anymore. And also, this is the first time, isn't it, that we've had something truly global happen. a truly global crisis that has affected every country in the world. And so, therefore, in the media, on social media, on television, we have seen into the living rooms of people all around the world. And that's the first time that has really happened. And so I think also that has made an impact on people, and hopefully in a very positive way. And so even if the media isn't picking up immediately on awareness about sustainability, about flights, etc., I do think that there will have been a shift in so many of the people who do travel, and it only takes a little shift, of course, to make quite a lot of change.
Yeah, I agree. Joe, do you have any more to add on that?
I mean, I think Lynn's point is a beautiful one, that we are all connected, whether we realize it or not. And I think COVID has been a tremendous opportunity for us to realize just how connected we really are. And so I think we're at an extremely important moment in time where things like racial equality and justice, where, pandemics and the suffering that's happening all around the world, I think that's an important time for us to kind of take stock and notice how really connected we all are. And one of the reasons why I'm grateful about the time today is it's because of the, 1,500 travelers that are here listening to us, because it really starts with you. It starts with the travelers asking the hard questions to their suppliers, to the tour operators, to the airlines, to the cruise lines, to the destinations who are marketing their destinations, organizations that are marketing their destinations. You need to be asking the hard questions of us in order to make sure that we continue to evolve this industry to a place that really is, and you've heard all of us say this is one of our tagline, travel is a force for good. And I believe the group here can help move that forward if we demand more from the companies that we're doing business with, that they align with our values, that you follow that they open up and become more transparent. So and I know G's done a lot of work here, and a lot of the organizations that have joined Shannon's ATTA do a lot of that work to show, where does the money go? How much of it stays in the local economies? That's a very important question. How do you treat your people? How inclusive are you? How diverse are you? We need to be able to open up the hood and understand that and become more transparent. And so I think that to me, COVID has just shined a light on this. We're going to forget about COVID several years from now, I think, once there's a vaccine, and that won't be the focus. What needs to be the focus is the fact that we are also connected, and there are bigger issues at hand with climate change and racial equality and justice that we as a travel community can really, really make a dent in. And so that's what I think is the opportunity right now.
Excellent. Let's move a little bit into, a lot of questions on, when people start traveling again, what will travel look like? And Shannon, I'm just going to put this out to you because I know you're doing a bit of work here with the ATTA about, new travel standards and, what you're seeing, what travel is going to be like on the other side of this. I mean, that everyone's talking about different sanitization programs, but ultimately we want travelers to feel comfortable again and get to as carefree as we can prior to this pandemic for people to be at ease to travel again. What are you seeing, and maybe you can let us know what the work you're doing at ATTA?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bruce. One of the things that we were hearing from a lot of our destinations that we work with and some of the companies as well is that there were a whole plethora of new protocols and guidelines coming out for sanitation, and they're all over the map. We even saw one that said you should carry a box of toothpicks with you wherever you go, so that when you go into an elevator, you can hit the elevator button with the toothpick instead of your hand. So we were looking at all of this and going, wow, we really need some standardization here as much as we can so that we're all on the same page. So we brought in a team of technical experts a couple of weeks ago and started building new guidelines, or not new, guidelines for COVID-19 health and safety. And so we're in the process of that right now. We are working with the Cleveland Clinic, who is overseeing these from a medical standpoint. And we released to our membership yesterday, which consists of a lot of tour operators and travel agents and destinations, the first draft to be reviewed. And Gadventures was actually a big part of helping contribute to that, helping get it off the ground. So we really appreciate that, along with Switzerland Tourism and Japan as well. So we're marching forward on that. There will be an overall protocol, and then there will be some drill downs into hiking trips, rafting trips, cycling trips, and then we'll be adding more as the summer goes on. So in my mind, this is important work to help get things reopened more quickly, really integrate safety with the view of COVID in mind, and try to move the ball forward. So I think travel is going to look very different. And the good news for adventure travel is that it really already fits what people are starting to migrate towards in their own dreaming and thinking. Small groups, open air, nature, friends, family, healthy trips. So crowded places, who wants to go to a crowded place right now? I think travel is going to look different, probably forever, or at least for a decade, which is going to feel like forever. So I think it's going to be very different, but it is not all bad. I think Joe and Lynn both brought up great points about how travel, we can actually be better for the planet, better for places. And
but I'll go to you, Joe, on this one, and then over to you, Lynn, just to answer this question about cultural exchange. Travel for us at Gadventures, but certainly for a lot of your operators as well, Shannon, is, cultural exchange has become, a very important part of experiential travel. I mean, and when you're talking about these standards of disinfecting vehicles and hotel rooms, these things can be standardized for mainstream travel quite easily. But in small scale travel, in going into small communities or staying in very local family run hotels, do you think this is going to have an effect on that kind of cultural exchange? And the idea of what we have pioneered at Gadventures is more community travel, and we really push people into the idea of traveling as small as possible. And those standards are going to be harder to enforce or certification programs to educate small scale businesses. Do you think it'll affect that kind of cultural exchange, and will we be able to connect with communities in the same way on the other side of this, Joe?
I mean, in the short term, yes, because it will affect it. It already is, and until we have a vaccine in place that allows everybody to feel comfortable and safe, being able to give each other hugs and get into people's homes and businesses and kitchen tables, it will. But that's why it's so important, I think, Bruce, to be talking about this, because it is such a fundamental core part of what all of us here on this call really believe in. We believe in the idea that travel isn't just something you do for 2 weeks out of the year. It's what you do the second you walk out your front door every single morning. So it's not an act, it's a way of being, it's a mindset. And that mindset is surrounded by values of curiosity and open-mindedness and a willingness to get outside of your comfort zone a little bit and stretch yourself. And so we really need to put a focus on why travel is so important, and cultural connection is a huge core pillar of that. So, in the short term, it will be impacted, but I think we have to keep in mind just that how important it is. I mean, people ask me, hey, Joe, how many countries have you been to? That's kind of like that's like the scoreboard. And I don't give a crap how many countries I've been to. What I care about is how many, because what does been really mean? Did I land there? Did I transfer through the airport? Did I set foot outside the airport? Like, what does been mean? My scoreboard, and my wish is for us to use how many kitchen tables have we been able to sit at in the places where we've visited. How many times have we been able to get into someone's studio or place of business or house of worship and understand how they see the world? So that is such a key part. And it ultimately goes to that fundamental statement of it's pretty hard to drop bombs on people that you know. And so the more we know each other, the more we understand what it looks like to be in someone else's shoes, the better chance we have of creating a sustainable planet that fears less. And so this is our time to really focus on why this is important to talk about and to get to that place of creating connections in virtual spaces while we can't do it in physical places, and supporting those communities that are suffering. There is a lot of the spotlight's on COVID, but talking to our folks, some of our friends in Thailand right now and around the world, I mean, there are things that are happening there that they are going to have a lot of trouble with, dengue fever, tuberculosis, things that are going to creep up because our focus is in other places. And so we have to really make sure that we're in this time thinking of ways that we can really support these local communities that cannot right now support themselves.
Excellent. Lynn, can you add to that again? Just a reminder of the question, because sometimes we get kind of involved in the answers. Just
Sorry
about cultural exchange, and the future of that in a sanitized travel, in a sanitized world on the other side of travel, and local community, village, kitchen tables, going into someone else's kitchen table. Can we travel like that again? Will we get?
We will. And I just thought, oh, Joe, you put it so well. I just agreed. I wanted to applaud you all the way through that. That's brilliant. And there's obviously going to be practical issues from the start. One practical issue, of course, will be, will the community want us? Will they want to take that risk? And so, for instance, I went to Guyana last year, visited several community-run lodges there and so on. They're doing fantastic work. But they have actually said at the moment they don't want visitors, even adventure travellers there, because obviously they are worried about what will happen. And so that's going to have to be managed very carefully. There's also going to be practical issues such as, for instance, a Latin American, a Uruguayan lady said to me, social distancing is going to be very, very difficult for us because we're a kissing culture. And I thought that was brilliant. Yes, of course. She is having to work with her employees, with her guides, to say, listen, when you're welcoming our visitors, when you're spending time with them, that you mustn't hug and kiss them, and that it's going to be so hard for them culturally to do. But of course, we'll get over it. We'll absolutely get over it. But Bruce, I think we're talking too much. And come on, I want to know what you and Gadventures are going to do about cultural exchange, because it's so much part of your DNA. So what plans have you got?
Well, it's funny. I mean, it starts in the buying process, actually, because, we're kind of we're redoing, having new conversations with our operators of what travel is like. And when you deal with small operators and small scale businesses, the relationship is very different because they rely on us for information quite often. And so we actually have to educate them about not only what we expect, but our travelers expect. So they're always quite open because they want to work with us on some level in business. But we're having conversations about how we're going to take these standards and interpret them for small scale businesses, and how we can create education programs so we can actually preserve as much as possible that experience for people. But at the same time, we realize that we have to create a safe or allow our travelers to feel comfortable and be safe. Like, for instance, local transport. Like, we have some trips that incorporate local transport, and we can't do that anymore. And now we're going to take, and I don't know when that will return. We hope that will return, but right now we have to, we're looking at vehicles and how we're going to sanitization every night, after use, and those kind of things. So, I mean, we pioneered like that kind of like local experiences. So my hope is that there's actually a bigger market for that, but we have to educate a lot of those operators. On the other side of this, there's going to be like global standards. There's going to be industry standards. There's going to be country standards. There's going to be, individual establishment standards, and then there's going to be our own standards in terms of, there's going to be so many things to follow. I think the social distancing thing will take care of itself in any kind of big museums or Machu Picchu. How you see how Disney's opening, you have to schedule a time to go. And so those things will be taken care of. But we've always tried to push people away from those crowds anyways. Like our business has always been about taking people off the beaten path. So I'm hoping that there's a bigger audience for us on the other side of this. But at the same time, we have to figure out how we're going to make them feel safe. So thanks for asking the question. I'm glad I could take part in some of this conversations because it's so good. But let me go to to the learning side. So Joe, you touched on this, and I think this is the most important part about our movement or the sustainability movement or responsible tourism is the customer is king. When you decide to travel, and we have all these travelers on here right now listening to us, when you decide to travel, you have enormous power and privilege. When you make that decision, you want to go on holiday. And so let's get to a part now where we actually ask, give advice to the travelers here, because one of the top asked questions by our travelers is, how can travelers make better choices post-pandemic? Which is very interesting because it shows that our travelers are concerned and they want to know how they can make better choices. So that's a huge shift when people are asking that, to make sure that they do the right thing on the other side of this, as opposed to just asking questions, when can we travel again? And when can we create those one-way experiences again, where we just take, travel has to be, a give and take, and everyone should benefit, and it should be transformative for anyone. That includes customers, it includes local communities, it includes employees that execute. So our travelers are asking, and this audience is asking, how can travelers make better choices post-pandemic? So why don't we start with you, Shannon?
Well, thanks, Bruce. And I think this is definitely a subject we've been thinking about for quite some time as the association and working with a lot of companies like Gadventures, including Gadventures, on how does the travel industry impact the world? And I would say there are too many examples of travel being harmful to a place, whether that be crowding out wildlife habitats, overwhelming societies, when a cruise ship pulls up to a town of 300 people with 5,000 people on board and then pours into that place, what does that do to the social fabric of a destination? So for me, this pandemic has really put the exclamation point on travel really is our privilege. It's not our right. I know that there are some voices out there that say travel is a right, and I don't agree. I don't believe that. I think it's a privilege. It's a privilege for me to come and visit Lynn in London. It's a privilege for me to visit somebody in their place, not my right. So I think traveling with that attitude of I'm in your home and I should behave that way. And so I think this is where I think adventure travel really does hold the keys to responsible traveling. You're caring about the local people because they're a part of the economic equation. You are caring about the environment. You're traveling in responsible ways, in small groups, hopefully diving deeper into the culture and being transformed by that. So I think this is the pause button that we all kind of needed. And there's never been anything that's stopped us all for so long. I mean, it's one thing to have, say, a 9/11 happen and, you don't go out for a week or 2 weeks, especially if you were in some of the affected areas. But we're at months now, months. And if we don't learn lessons from this time, we're hopeless. So I think responsible adventure travel is the way forward. It holds the keys. It's conservation, commerce, and community all at an intersection. So this is why I love this space. The businesses that operate within it we're already of that mindset, and I'm hoping the general travel population will see this as the way travel should be done going forward. Great.
And Joe, can you add on that?
Yeah, I mean, here's what I would say. I think Shannon's points are great ones, and I think the debate between privilege or right. Honestly, my takeaway from that is if you treat it like a privilege, you're gonna be a better traveler. You're gonna be a better host if we treat it that way. But once again, I think it starts here with this group of curious, open-minded, global citizen travelers who really care about the world. And what I would say to this group is there's nothing better than opening a conversation through a powerful question. And I think the questions that you ask of your travel advisors, of your tour operators, of the destinations, of any travel supplier, anyone that's selling a service to you in this space, you have to be asking the right questions. So for me, the first one starts with, what can I do as a traveler to make travel a force for good in this world? And then I think about kind of the practical buckets, right? The cultural, social bucket, and how is my impact there? And what am I doing with my dollars there? The environmental bucket, and what am I doing to take care of the planet, to make sure that, I leave this place better than I found it. And then the economic bucket. Where are the dollars going? Where are my dollars going? Yeah. And that's a very important question to ask. I just read an article, this isn't travel related, but it highlights the issue. I was reading an article about Tesla the other day, incredible company, innovative company, trying to make the planet a better place. But you have to follow what they're actually really doing. The batteries that are powering Teslas, cobalt, is coming from mines in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where there's child slavery and indentured servitude, there's gross corruption, gross environmental damage happening, and all of that is getting pulled out of the earth in the DRC and getting put into these beautiful Teslas. Now, you might make the decision, it's up to you to decide, do I buy a Tesla or do I not? But the starting point is, once again, asking those questions. Where are those dollars flowing? And being able to know, is the organization that's marketing their destination putting tens and tens of millions of dollars into Facebook ads? You can have a political stance on Facebook. Some think it's God's gift to the earth. Others think it's what's caused all of this divisiveness. We should just know. So just ask the right questions that get the conversation started, and let's use that to create a more transparent conversation. And I think that's a good starting point for all of us.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. So Lynn, just going over to you now about, you guys, Wanderlust holds the World Guide Awards every year. And our CEOs have been honored many years in a row, and we love that. It's great recognition for, the warriors on the road that deliver our amazing experiences and, and honor our kind of aggressive brand promise. But, on the other side of this, the role and the future of, do you see a difference or a change in a guided experience, or the benefit of a tour leader to travel? And will people be confident to travel independently with all these kind of standards and things that have to be followed in order, and advanced tickets for a lot of things now, because you can't just rock up to Machu Picchu in the future. Do you see that that's going to affect the industry, or have you heard anything about that from your kind of audience?
I think it's really highlighted that people, rather than travelling independently, should perhaps travel with a tour guide, should travel with a really good travel company. And because obviously, as you know, I'm passionate about guides, which is why we run the awards, and we get over 4,000 guides nominated each year. So up to now, guides have had that power, obviously, to transform the travel experience for people. That's what the really good ones do. And they educate, and they inform, and they inspire. And of course, now I think their role is also going to be a guardian. They are going to be the ones who will keep people safe and will open so many doors for them, and will be the trusted friend, the trusted advisor more than ever. And it's been interesting to see. I mean, we asked again in one of our recent surveys, and we have a fantastically close relationship with our subscribers. We asked again in a recent survey about whether people going forward would be travelling in small groups, travelling tailor-made, travelling independently. And it does look as if anything, the number of people travelling in small groups and travelling tailor-made is going up. And I think this is it. People are thinking, yeah, actually, I do want to go with somebody I can trust and can help me through this. And so that is really good to see. And I think it does mean that guides will hopefully get the recognition that they deserve as well.
Excellent, excellent, Lynn. Thank you. So, the time has just flown by, you guys. We've done 45 minutes. We're going to bring Chris back on at one point here. So I want to get to a couple other questions because I'm looking at the side here because I'm seeing a flood of the live questions, and there's literally, it's ridiculous how many live questions. So we have some GLs in the background that are kind of looking at those questions, and Chris is going to come back on in a second and ask us some of the questions that are being asked live right now. But I'm going to ask for quick answers on two quick final questions because I want to inspire people. And all this talk about, the changes of travel and, what we're going to have to do on the other side when people are generally adverse to change, but, we're all in this situation together. So as an industry, though, what do you think we have to do as an industry to get people to travel again? To feel safe again and to just travel again. Any kind of quick advice? I'll start with you, Joe.
Well, honestly, Bruce, I think what we're seeing, and, Lynn alluded to, communicating and surveying her audience, and we're doing the same thing. And I'm sure what we're both seeing is there is a pent up demand for people who want to go and travel. So that, in a sense, that is very, very encouraging. I think as an industry, what we can do is figure out how to come together better because there's so much information out there. The situation is very fluid. Like you alluded to, Bruce, there's so many different standards. And so it's very, very hard for travelers to make sense of it all because there's so many different standards and there's so many, and things are changing so fast. And that really, honestly, that just starts with leadership at the very top. It's obvious we don't have that in our country here in the United States. And so that's really where it starts. But, since we don't have that, we have to take it upon ourselves to educate ourselves. And I think, the work that Lynn and her editorial team is doing, the work that Shannon and his team is doing to get the word out there, the work that our team is doing, if you just go on to the homepage of afar.com, you can get a lot of the practical information that I think a lot of travelers are asking about right now. So it's informing ourselves and listening to the right voices that align with your values.
Excellent. And what are you hearing from your members or Shannon? And again, the question, as an industry, what can we do? What can we do to get people to travel again? We got to get people traveling again. So
yeah,
some quick tips.
Bruce, I've been thinking a lot about this because not only am I in the industry, but I'm a traveler. So I put myself on this spectrum too. There's a spectrum of people who would have traveled in March and April. They're ready to get on a plane today, right? And then there's the other end of the spectrum of people who are going to need a lot of assurance. And one of my concerns is for people over 60, they've been told so many times that they're in the risk category that I fear that a lot of those folks are going to be very hesitant to go back. Then there's this huge middle. So my mind is set on how do we help that group in the middle feel more comfortable about getting back out there. And I think that it's going to be different for everyone. I think everyone in the industry has a part to play, but for me, it's just about really being honest and open about what are the risks, how can we mitigate them, and are you going to live your life? And people need to travel to live their lives. And I know I made a comment about it being a privilege, not a right. And I think it's because it's a different attitude. Like probably all of us on this call and probably most of the listeners would count travel experiences as their most inspiring moments in life, the things that have changed them the most. And so I view it as absolutely vital for us to get back out there. I think for us, it's about communicating safety. And then there is some level of risk. Life is about risk. Walking out of your door is a risk. And, let's do everything we can, put together, safety protocols, get them out there, get companies using them, communicate the places that are ready to receive visitors, and be honest about data. And people will start start moving again. It's starting already. We're seeing it. And I talked to a small cruise expedition company who said for the next year, they're going to require people to prove with a certificate that they don't have it at the time. And how the logistics work, I'm not sure. But they want people to be able to get on board and relax and enjoy Alaska, enjoy Mexico, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of different steps, but we just have to keep believing that it's going to come back.
And
Okay.
Bruce, one quick question, just one quick comment on that too. I think one piece of advice that was helpful for me, because we've been frozen shut, for 3 months.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, do you start off sprinting again, or do we need to kind of jog into this? And so for the travelers out there that have some trepidation, start small. Travel begins, we said this, the second you walk out your front door every morning. So, go and support the local businesses in your community. Maybe, do a staycation for a weekend. And once you start getting more comfortable and accustomed, start to spread your wings and go further and further. And if you really want to accelerate that, to Lynn's point, bring on a trusted wingman or wingwoman to help you. And in this case, it's a travel advisor or travel agent, or, a high quality, reputable operator such as, G or others. And so that's how you can take those steps without feeling overwhelmed or confused by everything going on.
Excellent. Okay, we have to get to Chris, but I just have one more question. Because you guys are well-regarded experts in the industry. I believe that we have to be the guiding lights to get people to travel again. So my question, before we go to the live questions today and bring Chris back, let's inspire people. When are you traveling again? Where do you want to travel next? Any plans? I'm planning, so I'll start. I'm trying to I want to go to Italy in August and Japan in September. So I'm trying to get plans together. I need obviously flights to get there, so there's a little bit of an issue with that. Can't swim there. But what about you? Where are we planning to travel next? I'll start with you, Lynn. Sorry.
Oh gosh, I think I'm giddy with excitement at the thought of going anywhere, to be frank. I mean, to pick up on the point of going locally first, next week I'll probably go have a little break in the UK, going to go up to Cumbria and stay in a hotel belonging to a friend who is getting ready to open it again, but has said, hey, come and stay before it opens. And so that will be really special. But yeah,
the local.
So
local to start.
First, but then I'm just keeping my options open because places are opening at different times, and like I say, I want that thrill of being on the plane and then takeoff, or I want that bit of culture shock that you get in the first 24 hours of being somewhere new. And I want that, waking up in the strange hotel room. I'm so excited at the thought of all of that.
What about you, Shannon? Any travel plans?
Yeah, we're gonna do a drive to Colorado this summer to see family, and then so I'm doing that. I'm doing the local first, and then our plan is I'll be in Japan also. I hope in October, and then my wife is from Brazil. We're really hoping to do New Year's in Brazil, which we did last year, which is pretty unbeatable for a New Year's destination. So that's our plan right now, and hoping we can follow through.
And Joe.
Yeah, so I have a 7.5-month-old, and so my travel has changed a little bit, which has been awesome. I mean, so what we're thinking now is we're going to spend the summer here in Maine and really explore Maine. I bought my Thule backpack that I can pop her into, and REI had a big sale a couple weeks ago, so I took advantage of that. I'm going to use our the natural outdoors to travel, and then I've got some family things coming up in October. My dad and family's from Spain, so there's a wedding that's going to happen in October where they're asking me to be the best man. So I'm trying to figure out how to make that possible.
Hey, Joe, we've been talking for a while to do a silent retreat together.
That's right.
So
I was planning on, it's funny. I feel like we've been on this retreat for 3 months, but it's been a retreat of isolation and not so much solitude and refuge. So I was getting ready to go on my third 10-day Vipassana retreat in April, and that obviously got canceled. So, an opportunity, Bruce, we should find 10 days and take some refuge.
Excellent. So let's bring Chris back. Chris, can you just magically appear? Boom, there we go.
Magic.
So Chris, we have so many live questions. Time is of the essence. We might go a little bit over. We've got a massive audience. It's unbelievable, actually. And so Chris, what kind of questions are we getting?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for great dialogue so far. We're going to get right into it to try to answer as many questions as possible. And the first question, I'm going to start with Lynn. And the question is, when do you think travel will restart?
Oh, that is the number one question, isn't it? And that is the thing we're getting asked all the time. Now, obviously, I'm in the UK, so we are being hindered at the moment by the UK government. We've got an advisory saying that we can't travel. And we've also been told that we've got to quarantine for 14 days when we get back from anywhere. So that is what we're facing in the UK at the moment. Now, everybody is praying that on 29th of June, that will be overturned. Everybody's lobbying the government in the travel. That is what we're hoping. As soon as that FCO advisory lifts, there is definitely a pent-up demand. I'm not saying 100% of people are going to travel again straight away, but there will be a substantial number who will want to travel. So that is certainly in the UK what we're waiting on. And then, it'll be kind of staged over that. I don't think it's going to be like turning a light switch on. No, none of us think that. But, places will open up, flights will start again, and that will be a gradual process.
Thanks, Lynn. And Lynn brings up a great point. This is a very regional question, right? So I'm going to go around and ask everybody when you think you'll be able to when travel will restart. So, Joe, what about you?
Honestly, it's already starting. You're seeing that happening. And so, like I said, travel, it starts with a state of mind and exploring your backyard and extending from there. And we're already seeing, if you look at the TSA numbers, the number of people that are getting on planes in the United States is exploding. I think it was up to went from 300,000 last week to 600,000 in the span of a couple of days. And so we're already seeing that volume pick up. We're seeing the restaurants and shops opening in places like California and all around the US. So it's started. But like Lynn mentions, it's going to be a gradual, uneven, very clunky process. So,
Shannon, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I saw some comments in the chat too, and I think that a vaccine is going to be where we really see a huge shift. Until then, it's going to be people who are comfortable with whatever level they are. So for me, it's going to be local and domestic for a while. So I personally don't see myself getting on an airplane until later in the fall, and even then, I want to know that things are somewhat under control. If the numbers are still weird in the press or rising, I personally would hold back. But I think there's so many fronts, there's so many pieces of information that we still need. I think that's the thing about any future telling right now. We're still operating in an environment where not all the answers are clear. But I think all of us want this to move forward as quickly as possible, because it's hurting so many people and keeping us from pursuing our dreams. But we need some assurances for sure.
Thanks, Shannon. And Bruce, any thoughts on when you think travel will restart?
I'm amazed to hear Joe talking about restaurants being open. Obviously, our countries are in very different levels of lockdown. We can't go anywhere still. So Canada's quite locked down. Our borders are closed. There's no restaurants open. I got a haircut, and it was like last week, and it was like this major covert operation to get a haircut. I think I was breaking the law, actually. But anyways, I mean, as an operator and as the head of Gadventures, we are thinking we're going to get people traveling starting to travel at the end of this calendar year, like the last quarter. but those will be early adopters. Those are the people that line up for 2 weeks for a new iPhone. And those are people that are, that are wanting to be the first in, and, they're going to take it, they see it taking advantage of places that were normally crowded, that are going to be empty. Having opportunity to see the pyramids of Egypt without lining up, or the Great Wall, or Taj Mahal, or Machu Picchu. But I'm thinking that early next year, that we'll see a greater return. And, there's hope that this vaccine is coming out near the end of this calendar year. I think it's going to take us a very long time to immunize the world. But I think that's the next step before travel becomes, regular again. And so I think spring and summer is our hope that we return to a fairly, safe and regular kind of departures, and, getting a good amount of people traveling again. But I do think people are going to start traveling in the last quarter of this year. And our market especially are, adventurous people and people who prioritize travel as an important part of their life. And that's a very different travel than someone who books a week on the beach type holiday. To them, it's a commodity product, but people who travel with us, generally, it's a priority in their lives. It's part of, they budget for it. It's part of their yearly, expenses. And we'll see them bounce back, I think, a little quicker.
Lynn, my next question's for you, and the question is, how can travelers support local communities? Should we schedule travel now anyway, knowing it may be postponed?
Big question there. I mean, the way to help local communities is definitely just to get out there, isn't it, and go. So, yeah, do plan ahead for doing that. And I think, I know certainly the travels I'll be doing myself in the next year or so, I want to make sure that local communities are benefiting from them. And I think there is much more of a feeling that we want to do that. And so as far as actually booking that, scheduling it, knowing it could be cancelled, well, obviously you've got to check with your travel company about that. And I think this is why it is important to use a trusted travel company. And you need to find out what the policy is. You need to ask up front what's going to happen. Is there that flexibility, if one can't travel to the country on that date? I think we're all going to, anyway, this has been such a shock to our system. I think we're all going to have to be a bit more flexible, aren't we, in the next couple of years about where we go and when. But it would certainly just be worth talking to, somebody like G, obviously, to find out, hey, if I do want to go in October, where can I go, and what sort of options are there, and so on. And it's just important that we are out there. So many livelihoods have been lost through this. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm a wildlife lover as well, and into conservation. And, national parks are hurting, poaching has increased. Mm-hmm. And, conservation projects are struggling and suffering, and we've got to help them. The world needs us, all of us in on this call, we need to be getting out there and helping to heal the world.
Thanks so much, Lynn. And Bruce, as an operator, do you want to follow up on that question? How can travelers support local communities? And should they be scheduling travel now, knowing that there is a chance it may be postponed?
Yeah, I mean, it is about the support. I mean, for those of people who travel with more of a purpose and are and have that purposeful kind of reason for why they travel, it's more important than ever to travel and for us to get people to travel again. But at the same time, with saying that, I mean, of course, I own a business that takes people traveling, but people have to feel safe. So we have to get people to feel safe that they can travel, but their support means everything. And we're seeing a lot of passengers just putting deposits on trips because they want, and so they're flexible so they can change them, or we're trying to figure out a way we can have open deposits for people because they just want to show support to the company, and they want to show that they're going to travel with us again as soon as they can. So I do think I think we've all established here, and we all, in this group of people, we all know the value and the purpose and the transformational aspects of travel. People are traveling to the poorest countries in the world, and they're buying luxury holidays, and because of leakage and what happens with mainstream holidays today, communities aren't benefiting enough. So we have an opportunity as an industry to become a transformational industry on the other side of this. More and more people are going to ask questions. So I'm pretty excited about that opportunity for us as an industry. but yes, people need to travel. And I think you can book travel in 2021 and feel safe that, we're all working day and night right now in the industry to do whatever we can to get people up in the air again and traveling again. The airlines are highly motivated with, hundreds of thousands of planes on the grounds right now. We're all motivated to get people to travel, and whether it's the medical community that has 112 teams working on a vaccine, or it's our community, which is, trying to get people to travel again. Outside of the business aspect, which I speak before, and I don't, there's also the human aspect and the benefits that travel offers to communities, and the amount of people around the world that create their livelihoods are based around tourism. 1 in 10 jobs on the planet, almost 8 or 9% of the global GDP. So travel is we have to get people traveling again. And I can safely say that there's so many great, smart, motivated people trying to make it safe again for people to travel. I think that we are going to make it happen. Everyone's doing their part, from the hotel level to the airline level to the transportation level to car rental companies to whatever. And you have to put your faith in that we're going to create an environment for people to travel again. There'll be short-term changes, I think, on how people travel, and there's no standards. But I think long-term, and once a vaccine is found, tradition has shown us that people actually have very short-term memories, actually, and we could bounce back even quicker. But there's so many it's a fluid time right now. There's so many changes, and it seems like every day is a month right now in terms of the news and information that's coming out. But what I can say as an expert or as someone who's in the industry, they're highly motivated, smart people trying to make it safe for people to travel again, and we will accomplish that. And it will happen. I am suggesting domestic holidays, this summer. In Europe, Italy's opening, and Spain is opening, and Portugal's opening. Different countries are opening, so we will be able to get some international travelers for those early adopters. But ultimately, whatever comfort level you are, you have to wanting to travel again. We will be able to travel again, and you should have confidence. And we will. It's our job to give you that confidence. We're working on it.
My next question is for Shannon, and the question is, what will travel and health insurance look like moving forward? Will travel insurance be possible before a vaccine?
Ooh, I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that. A lot of the insurance companies are figuring this out as they go as well. I do think travel insurance will continue to be around, and it's an important thing to have as every part of every trip. But to be honest, I don't know the answer that person is looking for. That's still being figured out. And
that's totally fair. So thank you for offering that up to us. Joe, yes, please go ahead, Lynn. Yes.
I was only going to say, because I was literally on a webinar before this, and there's just this week, there's been a couple of insurance companies in the UK who say they are working on new policies that they're going to bring out as soon as the Foreign Office advice changes, and that will cover COVID. And so the feeling is that if they're saying that now, other insurance companies obviously will be doing the same. So we're expecting in the UK that there will, within a couple of weeks, be new insurance policies. The other thing we're noticing is that there are actual hotel groups and other businesses starting to come out as well, saying that they will look after people's healthcare costs and so on if there is any problem when they're there. And so there seems to be, quite a big start of quite a big movement to make people feel confident health-wise. Yeah,
I've had that question quite a bit, and I'll just add quickly, Chris, that there's no industry that's more competitive than the insurance industry. And competitive tension is what drives that industry. So ultimately, it just takes one, and everyone falls in line, because there can't be just one insurance company that offers COVID protection. So I think that industry regulates itself because of the tension created by competitiveness. And I do think that'll take care of itself, because those companies also have to survive through this and offer a product that people want, that's relevant to, travelers now.
And that's precisely why we're going to get through this crisis. Look how you all tag teamed that answer. That was amazing. The collaboration really got us there. So thank you. Joe, this one's for you. The question is, do you think Instagram and the influencer culture on social media has ruined the authenticity of travel?
Oh,
I'm glad Joe got that one.
that's a hard one. Because yes, I mean, and as someone that's been off of Instagram for over two years, I'm probably the least qualified to answer this. But our team talks about it a lot, and I think for us, what we saw with influencers in general was that it was just a group of folks that kind of looked the same, said the same, had the same motivations, which was free trips and look at how great my life is. And our team, as we think about influencers, let's raise the bar a little bit. How easy is it to post a picture on Instagram, put some color filtration on it and make it look spectacular? I mean, I can do that. And so what we need to do is raise the bar and actually work with a diverse, talented group of content creators and storytellers that can really get beneath the surface of places and pull the stories out and connect you to those places in deep, tangible ways. So that's really the mission that we're focused on. And there's some influence. It's like anything. You can paint a broad brush and stereotype any group of people. So I'm not meaning to stereotype influencers, because you've got great ones that think like that, and then you have the rest. And so I guess I was responding to just the rest. And my ideal version is, diverse group of folks that are smart and align with our values, that can talk about places in a way that make you want to go there and help you understand them more deeply than you did before.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. The next one's for Bruce, and the question is, can responsible adventure travel absorb all those who like to travel and still remain sustainable? Does it risk becoming a victim of its own success?
No, I don't think so. When I say absorb all those, like, you mean absorb all travelers? No, I don't think we could absorb all travelers either. I think there's always going to be a mainstream commodity style, amenities-driven travel market. But what Lynn said earlier, it just takes a small group of people, though, to change their mind, to have a seismic impact on the landscape of our industry. So I think that we are a niche industry. We are a small industry, small group adventure, sustainable, responsible, social enterprise, whatever you want to call us as an industry. We are extremely small. Like, it's a small industry. It's a freckle on the massive mainstream travel industry. We have tons of capacity to grow, and we have tons of capacity that we can take more and more travelers into a more conscious and responsible and purpose-driven travel before we will see effects of overcrowding or be too much. So we can absorb. Are we, the other part of that question, are we the victims of our own success? I think that is actually a bigger question. Yes, our industry has been one of the fastest growing sectors for a very long time. That breeds a lot of other people to want to be in this space, and you suddenly see mainstream operators trying to greenwash their businesses to try and get a part of that industry, to kind of replicate in words what we do, but not in practice, and not changing the philosophy and the operational business model of their company, but wanting to kind of get into the business on some level. So we see a lot of mainstream companies suddenly creating foundations or giving to charities and being able to put a logo on their brochure, but it's really not doing the groundwork in terms of creating dialogue with local communities and creating transformational experiences that benefit communities, and actually document that, make it transparent to the customer, and and actually actively figure out better ways in which you can do it over time, not just and not be satisfied with what you're doing presently. So yes, we are a bit of victims of our own success, but we have tons of capacity still to absorb many more travelers. So all of you who are on here are all welcome on our trips. We have tons of space. And tell your friends. We'll have space for all of them too.
Shannon, what about from an industry perspective? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Specifically?
Apologies, just when it comes to being a victim of our own success.
Oh yeah, for sure. And even last year, I said somewhat glibly, now it feels very glib. I said that I hoped the overall arrival numbers would drop a little until we learn how to be more responsible with travel. Never imagined this coming, and not only a little drop, but a full stop. So I think that yes, that tourism kind of grew out of control. You know, kind of alluding to what Bruce said, and yet there are a lot of companies who are trying to do it right. And I think that's what customers should be looking for, is companies that are committed to taking care of local people, protecting the environment, and having the lowest environmental impact, but a good financial impact for destinations. Tourism needs to be less frivolous and more purposeful.
Thank you. And I've got just one question left, and I'm going to actually ask all of you that question. I'll start with Lynn on this one. If you could roll time back, what one thing would you change to enhance travel and make it better for the future?
What? Oh, no, thanks for coming to me first, Chris.
All right, Lynn, you know what? I'm going to give you a second to think about it, because I know that Bruce actually wrote a book kind of about some of these topics. So, Bruce, why don't you kick it off, and we'll give everybody a chance to think on that one.
The question is again?
Yes. So
I wrote the book on this, but I don't know the question. Sorry.
If you could, essentially it's saying, what's one thing that you would change to enhance travel and make it better for the future?
Oh, okay. Well, that's really easy. What's the time machine part? I would say the one thing that if I could improve is people being connected to destinations. It's my hope that more people will be connected to where they go and why they go. Because the travel industry is at a place now where people are sold amenities. Like, you go because there's 10 restaurants to choose from, or there's a Broadway show, or there's a carousel, indoor surfing, zip lines, go-kart tracks I've seen, and the destination has become irrelevant because it's just so counterintuitive to me of what travel should be. And so my hope, and if I could change anything, is that people would actually have a purpose to go, not just to just travel. So if you say you want to travel, that's one thing. But when you actually do your research and decide you want to travel, I'm remembering that you have that power and privilege in that moment, that you actually are somehow connected to why you want to go to a specific country. And so, that's my hope, that people, get away from being connected to amenities and the destination becoming irrelevant, to a point where they're connected to a destination. Nothing's better than when we get a passenger who comes on a trip and they meet us in the Galapagos Islands because they did a book report when they were in grade 6 about the Galapagos Islands. Or so you get someone who sponsors a child in Kenya for years when they were younger as a family, and it caused their imagination. Now they wanted to just see Kenya, of where that child that they sponsor. Those kind of connections and that kind of purpose is what makes travel special. Yeah.
Awesome. Lynn, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Oh, no. Okay, I'm going to be really provocative, and I'm going to say I would love to see people travel without, and I wouldn't do this myself, but I'd love to see people travel without an electronic device or a camera. Because I think back to my first travels, which was before smartphones and everything, and you did get a deeper connection because you had to ask people, you had to communicate with people, you had to ask people's advice. And what I find so dispiriting now sometimes is you can be in the most magical place. Say, I was in Georgia a few months ago, and you're visiting some incredible church or whatever, Orthodox church, and there would be a group of tourists just all looking at their phones and then getting a photo for Instagram. And they were not in the moment, they were not living the moment, and they were not interacting with locals. And that kind of tourism is so upsetting. And we've just had a television series here in the UK called Race Across the World. And it was where a bunch of couples, pairs of people, had to make their way through South America. And they had to do it without phones and on a very limited budget. And no way of, looking up where they were going or anything. So they had to talk to people. They had to go to the bus station and ask how to get somewhere. And it's really, it's been a massive hit here because people were watching this thinking, oh, wow, I don't know if I could do that. But wouldn't that be great if everybody had to do that again? Because, I think we're all guilty of it. Even us here, this panel and the people listening to this, I think we've all been guilty of going somewhere and keeping in touch with home, checking the news all the time, seeing what's going on, looking to see what's happening. We all fall into that trap, trying to get the perfect photo behind the lens, when really we should be living the moment. And I think we all need to vow that we're going to live the moment more when we're somewhere.
You've got me on that. Yeah, let's live in that moment. Absolutely. Thank you, Lynn. Shannon, what would you change to enhance travel and make it better for the future?
I love Lynn's answer. I wanted to just say, drop the mic right there. That was beautiful. I think if I could magically, and this is somewhat related to what Lynn said, if I could magically make it so everybody who traveled really connected, and I guess it's your answer too, Bruce, really connected to local culture. To me, that is the most transformative experience in travel. We go and see beautiful places, eat amazing foods, all that. But really, at the end of the day, it's about meeting the people in that place and really listening and learning, keeping the mouth shut, keeping the ears open, and it brings us home different. We're kinder, more gracious, and it's a people-to-people experience. And despite all the other things that we wrap around it, so I would. If I could change travel, it would be to make it more human.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Shannon. And Joe, if you could change anything to enhance travel and make it better for the future, what would you do?
Well, I love all the answers I've heard, and I think along those lines, it's something I said earlier, which is travel is really a mindset, and so it's a curiosity and an open-mindedness and a willingness to explore not just the outside world, but ourselves. And I think the answers are really within us. And so, yes, my wish is, and I came across this quote yesterday randomly by Marcel Proust, the French novelist, and I think it sums it up well. He said, the only true voyage would be not to travel through 100 different lands with the same pair of eyes, but to see the same land through 100 different pairs of eyes. And I think right now, at this moment, it is so important for us, so incumbent upon all of us to be able to see the world with a different set of eyes and to really put empathy, understanding, and connection at the forefront of every decision that we make. And to really understand that it's not us against them, we're all in this together. And the more that this community can continue to encourage their peers, their loved ones, their families who might not agree with the way that they see the world. But if you can show them that because you're out there traveling in deeper, richer, and more fulfilling ways, that you're leading a deeper, richer, and more fulfilling life. And when people see your actions, and as opposed to hearing your words, that's when their ears start to open and their eyes start to open, and they start to potentially become more receptive to, I think, all of the goodness that this type of travel that we're all talking about does for the world.
Amazing and inspiring answers all around. I'm incredibly pumped to get back out there and travel and do it the right way, as we've been talking about today. Before we wrap things up and I send it back over to Bruce, I do just want to go over some housekeeping notes for everyone. First, and absolutely the most important, is a massive thank you. Thank you to everyone for joining us, taking time out of your day and away from your families for joining us here today. We're incredibly grateful. In addition to that, while people aren't traveling, we at Gadventures stay committed to bringing you more surprises, such as our virtual travel experiences and more online events. So please stay tuned for more information about those. Speaking about online events, we just had an amazing one. And as mentioned earlier, this event has been recorded and we'll be sharing it on our YouTube channel later this afternoon. And finally, in case you missed it, and we just touched on it briefly, Bruce has been spending his time in lockdown pretty productively and actually wrote a book, an Insta book actually, called Unlearn, the Year the Earth Stood Still. And we'd love to make that available to all of you. So please check that out for a free download at www.gadventures.com. www.unlearn.travel, on Amazon, Apple Books, and Kobo in Canada. That's it for me. I'm going to pass it over to Bruce. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone, first of all, for coming and giving us your time today. One thing we always say at Gadventures, we never take people's time for granted. So, you know, we really appreciate you taking the time to come and share with us. This has been amazing, though. So thank you, Joe and Shannon and Lynn. I mean, I've just loved this conversation. The time has just sailed by because it was so interesting. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, and everyone, all the G elves in the background. There's a lot of people that are making happen. All the people who ask questions, you know, we couldn't get to them. There's just way too many. But I just wanted to bring up one last thing. And, you know, since we've actually organized this, and I had conversations, I reached out to all of you to kind of taken part in all of this. There's been a big issue in the world, and you touched on it, Joe, about issues on inequality, racial inequality, and you know, social reform and justice reform that is really topical. And you know, one of the questions I had, and we're out of time for questions, but I just wanted to say is how travel can impact that. Because I've been saying, and I really believe that the fastest path to peace is for people to know how other people live. To appreciate other cultures and know how other people raise their families or how other people worship, because there's been so much violence in the world based on not understanding each other. And this being a really turbulent time, but also a great opportunity for the world to move forward. I just want to end on that positive note that travel is that opportunity that when you go and you travel with an open heart to learn and appreciate, you come back home with a greater understanding of yourself, a greater appreciation of your community, and certainly a greater appreciation of your place in the universe. And that is something that you can't pay for. And travel can be that vehicle. And people think I'm a dreamer when it comes to travel, too much of a dreamer sometimes. But I really believe that peace is, global peace is tied to us coming together as a planet and understanding and have more understanding, compassion, and empathy for each other. So I leave it with that. I just thank you guys. And just for everyone who's out there watching right now, Lynn has an amazing magazine called Wanderlust. And if you're supporting local businesses, all of these people in front of you are entrepreneurs. I mean, they all have small businesses, and it's amazing what they do. You don't realize in the publishing industry how difficult it is to be a standalone magazine when there's so many conglomerates that exist, to have that single, passionate, independent voice. And that's why I asked Lynn to be here. So support her magazine. Joe, who has AFAR, is the same thing, an independent magazine that's doing great work and has such a powerful message that you can see with Joe's answers. And of course, Shannon, who's done so much thankless work for our industry, creating an association really of adventure and the Adventure Travel Trade Association, ATTA, Adventure Travel and Trade Association. Is that right?
That's right.
And again, tireless work, but amazing entrepreneur. So you guys have all my support. Thank you for supporting me by coming here today.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for all the work and vision that you've provided.
It's been so fun. I've loved being a host. I've got a new career, I think. So thank you all again for taking part, and thank you all for attending today.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye now.
Thank you.